Russ's Movie Corner. As you can see, I'm sitting in front of my movie wall, and today we are talking about Mission Impossible Fallout. Mission Impossible Fallout just came out last weekend, so it stars Tom Cruise, Rebecca Ferguson, Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, Alec Baldwin, Henry Cavill, Sean Harris, Angela Bassett, Wes Bentley, Michelle Moynihan, Vanessa Kirby. It is written and directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who actually did Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which was the previous one to this one. So this brings back Sean Harris, who was the villain in the previous one. So in this one, he's actually kind of still the villain. So there's some twists and some turns in there. Some of them you might see coming, other ones you might not. It's definitely a different movie. It's not your typical formulaic Mission Impossible. Like in my previous retrospective, I talked about how like they kind of had like Ethan gets the mission and then he assembles his team, and then the team kind of discovers the things, and then some things go awry, and then the end is good. And that was kind of the formula, and they used it in Mission Impossible 2, and they used it kind of in Ghost Protocol. Even though the IMF was disavowed in Ghost Protocol, they still kind of came in this sort of way of doing things. They kind of kept that formula, and in Rogue Nation, they kind of did something a little different, and that's kind of the formula that they stuck with this movie, Fallout. Um, so Ethan again is not. He's kind of pushed to the brink, like he was in. If you've seen the Rogue Nation, that's kind of how it works with this whole movie franchise right now. And it was a very different kind of Mission Impossible. The music was great. It had a lot of callbacks. That was one of the things that I really liked. Was if you've seen Mission Impossible 2, if you've seen Mission Impossible 1, if you've seen a lot of the previous films, they have a lot of callbacks to those, and I noticed that that's something that a lot of movies do nowadays, especially in franchises. Like they did it with Bond, with Daniel Craig. They had some of the villains from previous ones were connected to villains in the newer ones and that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of what they're doing, is they're kind of bringing in these brand new, well, not brand new, but they're bringing in these. They're kind of recycling some ideas, but they're more fan service, love letters to the fans. People that love the Mission Impossible series, like me, I'm a huge fan of the Mission Impossible series, so I couldn't wait for this one to come out when I saw the previews. And there was an interesting stunt that they did in London, where Ethan Tom Cruise is running across the top of a roof of a building, and he jumps between the two buildings. You can actually see this in the preview, and he kind of hits. And if you watch, his foot kind of goes at an angle, and when that happened, he actually broke his ankle because he did the stunt himself. And so actually it's kind of crazy because when he hoists himself up on the roof, he actually starts trying to limp. But then in the next scene, he's like running perfectly fine. So you know that that was the take that they used, was the one that he broke his ankle. Poor guy. Pretty soon that guy's gonna be like Jackie Chan. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that's what he did. In doing that. So and this does bring back Rebecca Ferguson from Rogue Nation, the previous film, as Ilsa Faust, and she does a tremendous job. She still has a lot of the same chemistry that she had with with Tom Cruise, Ethan Hunt in that in Rogue Nation. There was a lot of their on-screen chemistry that you kind of felt, and that's still there. It's an interesting dynamic between the two of them. They're not they're not a couple, but you kind of get the sense that they might be able to. And ever since Mission Impossible 3, where Michelle Moynihan was in that movie, she played Julia, who gets married to Ethan. And so in Ghost Protocol, they kind of showed her there, and you kind of got the sense that there was something that happened. I think Jeremy Renner's character, William Brandt, kind of talks about that a little bit, and so it's definitely something a little different. How they use her in this film. Um, so keep your eyes out for that. And Wes Bentley from The Hunger Games and a few other movies like that makes an appearance there too. I was actually surprised to see him because I was like, wait a minute, I know that guy. And I was like, oh yeah, that's Wes Bentley, the guy that played in the original Hunger Games. So yeah, that was definitely a nice surprise, seeing him pop up in the film. Simon Pegg is back. Ving Rhames, of course. He's always great for everything. Jeremy Renner is conspicuously absent in this film, and if you watched um, Infinity War, you'll know he wasn't in that one. But the cast list for Avengers 4, which is what they're calling it, is he's in it. So apparently they're gonna kind of show what happened to him in between, or they're gonna kind of deal with that when that comes out. So that's definitely something to keep your eye on. So maybe he'll be back for Mission Impossible 7. We'll have to see what happens in the future. I don't know the plans that they have for the character of Ethan Hunt. I know Tom Cruise is getting up there in age, and so I don't know how much longer he's going to be this action hero kind of guy. So I don't know if they're trying to set up maybe having Rebecca Ferguson or Jeremy Renner, or even um, Simon Pegg take over. I don't know what they're going to do with those characters. I don't know. They may have some sort of a torch passing in the next movie. I have no idea. We won't know until the next one comes out. But this is definitely a really good Mission Impossible overall. I mean, the stunts were just on par. There wasn't too many of the really crazy stunts like we've seen in the past, like him hanging over the floor in the first one, or flying down an air shaft in the second one, or anything like that. I mean, there was a helicopter scene that you can kind of see on the trailer that he's kind of climbing up a rope and then he kind of falls down the rope and stuff like that. But that's kind of really the only kind of death-defying stunt that they really did in this movie. So that was kind of a different take on the character of Ethan Hunt. Usually we see him do something really off the wall crazy, like climbing up the Burj Khalifa or doing something like that. But in this one, he's not really doing that. Which, I mean, it doesn't matter to me because I mean the action was still really good, and you really don't feel the passage of time with this one. Like sometimes in a movie, if you're not entertained, sometimes you can kind of feel the passage of time as it kind of feels like the drags on. But this one, it's almost like watching a Star Wars movie. It's like you sit down and then boom, it's done, and you're like, wow, that was really good. There is a little bit of just a tiny bit of some slowdown here and there, but I think that is more a case of the director and the editor were kind of trying to connect their story segments together, and so sometimes they have to kind of slow down the action to bring it to the next scene before the next action sequence and stuff like that. So it's not bad. And the chemistry, the on-screen chemistry between the characters, is really good in this film. So they really did a good job of bringing in a lot of characters that have a lot of really good chemistry, on-screen chemistry together. Sean Harris, again, just like in Rogue Nation, is on point. And Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, he was actually interviewed just recently, and he had made mention that when Daniel Craig is done playing Bond, he would not mind, because he really loved working on Mission Impossible Fallout. So he thought, hey, I wouldn't mind playing James Bond, guys. Like, listen to what I'm saying here, and because he is British, So I think he would. And actually, I was watching this film and I thought, wow, the Daniel Craig character, the way that they have that, he kind of plays that way in this film. Like if you actually go watch it, and kind of look at Henry Cavill, you'll kind of say, you know what, that guy really does actually kind of seem like a James Bond-esque character. Like I think he could pull off a James Bond if the producers decided to give him a chance. And I think where he's at right now, depending on the schedule with DC, I think he probably could play Bond a few times, because most of the time, I mean, because I know that with Pierce Brosnan, he did a couple of movies for USA, and they forbade him to wear a tux at all. So to get around that, in the second movie, because he had before in the first movie he hadn't signed the contract yet, and the movies are called Detonator and Detonator 2 Night Watch. And so if you watch the second one, to get around that, he like grew his hair out long, and he's got like this mustache and a little thing right here, a little tuft of hair right here, and so that way he didn't look like James Bond. It didn't look like Pierce Brosnan, so it was a completely different look for him. So I think that was kind of how the producers got around the whole notion of James Bond. So we'll see what happens with Henry Cavill, because I think he could actually do really well in Hollywood now, and we'll see if Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson decide to cast him as James Bond in the future. But as of now, Daniel Craig is tapped for Bond 25, which is coming out next year in November. So we won't know who's going to play Bond until after that. And they're probably going to wait another 6 months to a year before they decide, because, I mean, Daniel Craig has to say, no, this is my last Bond and I'm done. And they'll probably wave a huge sum under his nose to see if he wants to come back, but then he'll probably say, nope, I'm done. So we'll have to see what'll happen with Daniel Craig, but I'm pretty sure he's done because he's already kind of said in a bunch of interviews that, yeah, I'm done. But anyway, back to Mission Impossible. This movie is dynamite. I would recommend it no matter what. Go see it. It is dynamite. Even if you haven't seen Rogue Nation, even if you haven't seen any of the other ones, it's still a really good, really solid action film. You might not understand some of the character relationships in it if you haven't seen some of the movies, but definitely go see this one, especially if you've seen the movies, because they are really good. So, next up, trying to remember here just off the top of my head. I'll probably do a couple of DVD reviews. I know there's a movie coming out next week. I think it's Mile 22. Um, and I'm trying to go see The Equalizer 2. We'll have to see if I can get that one in the theaters or if I'll have to go out and wait until it comes out on DVD and get it then, because I really do like The Equalizer. It was a really good Denzel Washington film, so we'll just have to see what happens. So yeah, I think Mile 22 is the next one that I really wanted to see. I know there's probably another one in there that I'm missing. But yeah, just stay tuned to Russ's Movie Corner, and thank you for tuning in. And for my rating on this, I give it a 5 out of 5. It was excellent. Really good Mission Impossible. So, thank you again, and stay tuned for more.